Hello and welcome everyone to class number 4 of the Azon Masterclass. In today's lesson, we are going to be learning about getting the initial website set up and essentially getting our software prepared to be ready to actually begin constructing our site. So this is going to involve setting up the domain on our web hosting account, making sure the domain is pointing to the web hosting account, getting WordPress installed, and getting WordPress set up to be able to start the actual site construction process. Now, to begin with, you need to have a web hosting account, obviously, to be able to run a website. And this whole process of setting up the site on the web hosting account basically involves two different things. You need the web hosting account itself, and then you need a domain name to be able to connect these up together. So with that said, you can kind of do these in any order as long as you know the required information. Sometimes though, if you're setting up a brand new web hosting account, you may not know where to point your domain name until you actually get that hosting account set up. So if that happens to be the case for you, feel free to reverse the order on this and start with your web hosting account and then move on to transferring the domain name there. Now within a web hosting account, the vast majority of them are going to be using something called cPanel. And within cPanel, you have the different features that you are going to need to be able to set up your site and get the software on it that you need to be able to begin creating this website. Now, when you first create a web hosting account, you will be given something called domain name servers, or DNS, for your hosting account. And these two name servers are where you need to point your domain name to in order to get your site set up. Now, if you're already using an existing web hosting account, there's two different ways to go about getting that domain name server list if you do not currently know what those are. One of them is to go back and to look for your initial account creation email that you got from your web host. That will usually contain that information in it. Within Control Panel, you can also sometimes find this information. It really just kind of depends on your web host. It's actually looking like the web host that I'm using for this particular site. It doesn't seem to be showing this information. Sometimes over in the sidebar of the site of the cPanel, you can sometimes find those server names listed. Basically though, these server names look like this. You're going to have two of them, and it's going to say NS and then a number, dot, and then the domain name of whatever your hosting service is called. So on a lot of my websites, I actually end up using my own dedicated server, and so my name servers use one of my domain names. So I will have ns1 and ns2.ryanstevensonplugins.com. So basically, you need to go into your account that you are using to purchase and manage your domain names, and you're going to need to point this domain name at your web hosting account. And again, this is done by using these name server settings. You can just click on them, for example, in GoDaddy, where I have these domains registered. Click on Custom here, and then you can edit what these name servers are. Now, these are actually the name servers that I want to be using for this site, so I don't want to change these. But typically, I would go in here and paste these two items in for name server 1 and name server 2. Once I save this information, then once I have everything set up with my actual website, going to that domain name will then take people to my web server and to the website that I set up for this. So besides the domain name itself, the other piece of this is setting something up within your web hosting account. If you're already using an existing hosting account, one where you are allowed to have as many domain names as you want running on it, you go into the control panel for the main domain name for your site, and you use this add-on domains feature. This is going to simply allow you to add your new domain name to this web hosting account. And if you're dealing with a brand new web hosting account, when you are creating that account, you will specify the domain name that you want to be using on it. So you won't have to actually go through this process if you are creating a brand new hosting account. So to add a new one on, again, I just go into this add-on domains, and I simply type in the information that's needed. So I have the new domain name, and the rest of this information gets filled in automatically for me. And this is actually all I have to do to create this new domain on this account. So once I have done this, I have a new web directory that has been created for me. And this directory within this website is going to be where my website is actually installed. So with that said, if you're using an account with multiple domains on it, you need to make sure that when you're doing stuff such as installing WordPress, which we will be getting to in just a few minutes here, you need to make sure that the software is actually installing to the correct domain name. Now I'm actually going to be installing this website on a brand new hosting account. This is something that I've set up on my dedicated web server. And so you can see over here that I already have this set to funrobos.com. I obviously have already pointed the domain name over here by changing the domain name servers. And so with these two pieces now put into place, my website is accessible to the public. But there's not actually anything running over there right now. If I try to visit the website, all I get is this. It's just telling me what files are located on that website, but there's not actually anything there yet. So to complete the next step, we need to get something put on this website to where when people go and try to visit the domain name, they get to an actual website and not a listing of the files that are on this server. Now, installing WordPress on a website can really be done in a number of different ways. You can go to wordpress.org and actually download the software for yourself. If you download it yourself, you would then go into your file manager. You upload the file that you download from WordPress, and then you simply decompress it and visit uh, a script on in that package using the instructions that WordPress provides for you. It's pretty straightforward and easy, but you don't have to actually go through that manual installation process because cPanel will typically have something built in for you that you can use to quickly install WordPress on your site. Now, depending on your web host, this may vary slightly, but the whole process is basically still the same. Sometimes you will have under software, you'll have a link that says quick install. Quick install can be used to easily install WordPress. You will also sometimes have this Softaculous apps installer. And this usually is found in its own bar of icons as well, if Softaculous is the one that is installed on your control panel. So the whole point of these extra little tools here is to do all of the work for you. If I go into Softaculous, I get a list of the different scripts that I can easily install on my site. So if I want WordPress, I just simply click on WordPress and start the installation process. So installing WordPress, I just click on Install Now. I choose how my site is going to run, whether or not I want to use HTTPS, the domain name, which on this site is already selected because this is the only domain name I have on this web hosting account. If I had multiples though, I might need to click on this drop down box and make sure I am selecting the proper one. Now, one of the other more important things here is this directory. I'm only going to have WordPress installed on this domain name. So when somebody visits or just tries to type this address into their web browser, I want them to go directly to the WordPress site itself. So with that being the case, I don't want this installed to any kind of directory. I just want it to be installed to the base directory for this entire domain name. So I want to make sure I clear out the directory box here. The next things that I have to worry about are the basic site settings. This is going to include the name and the description for the website, and it's also going to include my administrator login information for this website. Now, the site name and the description here in this first section, it's not super important that I get this set correctly at this point because I can go back in and simply change this information within WordPress at any time. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and set this to state my domain name as the site name. And for the site description, I'm just going to provide a brief description of the actual niche that I'm going to be targeting with this site. Now remember, I'm doing programmable robot toys. So I will say something like an in-depth guide to programmable robot toys. What I'm trying to accomplish with this site description is ensuring that it's essentially summarizing what my entire website is about. But then I'm also including keyword phrases here, programmable robot toys to be specific for this particular description. Now beyond that, I have the admin account information. I'm going to be going back into my website and changing the information that I'm providing here, obviously because this is part of a live class and I'm even recording it. So I obviously would not want my login information for this site to be publicly known. When you're going through and doing it though, you should take a little more time in creating this information because even though your site probably doesn't have a real reason for somebody to try to hack into it, surprisingly, this type of thing happens pretty often with WordPress sites. It's not that somebody actually wants to take over your specific website because of the website that it is. There's really two main reasons why people want to try to hijack a WordPress website. One of them is to run advertising on the site, so they can deliver ads to your traffic and they earn money off of it. The other reason is to try to implant some type of a virus on the website. This could be to host other files that they want to be able to get free bandwidth for. It could be to load a virus onto other people's computer when they visit your website, for example. So with that said, you obviously don't want these types of activities taking place on this site that you're creating. And one of the easiest ways to go about trying to prevent this is by creating a complicated and not obvious set of login information for the WordPress administration area on your website. The first part of this is your username. Admin, in all lowercase letters, is the default username for every WordPress installation that there is. So if somebody's trying to hijack your site, they're not using some kind of fancy method to break into your site. All they are doing is guessing the login information for your admin account. And they do this using an automatic system. And so it will test over and over and over again until it just happens to get the right combination. So with that said, that kind of software is going to automatically target the basic admin username because the vast majority of websites will actually use this as their username. So what you want to do is use something different. It can be a normal login name that you are used to using for a variety of other types of websites. It can be something that's completely unique that you just made up for this particular website. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter as long as it is different from the basic lowercase admin. Now, temporarily, I'm going to set mine to roboadmin. And again, this is something that I'll be going back in and changing at a later time, not because this is a bad selection, but simply because this will now be on a recording where other people will be able to see this information. Now, the next thing I need to do is to create a password. You're welcome to create your own password if you want to. You can also use this password generator over here on the side, but take note that the password that this is generating for me is not super strong. It is ranking as a strong password, but it's usually only 58 to 60 points out of 100. So I could obviously do a lot better. You don't really have to get super creative. You don't have to have some crazy, hard to read password combination like this. What I actually recommend to do is to create something that is fairly easy to remember, but you want it to be pretty long. For this example here, you can see I don't have any weird special characters in it. I don't have even capital letters. It's all lowercase letters and one number. And this is registering as basically about as strong of a password as I can create. It will take one of those automatic login software types of tools a really long time, if it's even possible for them to actually guess a really long password such as this. But something short, even if it's complete gibberish like this one, it'll likely be able to guess this fairly quickly. So that's part of the reason for wanting to have a much longer password, even if it's not going to contain a bunch of weird characters and things of that nature. So with this information provided, I'm pretty much finished. The one thing that I will usually like to add on is this extra plugin that my control panel prompts me to install. It's called Loginizer, and it's simply going to limit the number of login attempts on my site. So that's going to make it even harder for somebody to use automated software to be able to try to figure out what this is, because it's going to limit the number of tries that they even have to do so. So once I've provided all of this information, now I just let this thing do all the rest of the installation for me. Once this software is installed, then I can access the actual website. So now I can log into this site. Just real quickly here, I'm going to go ahead and switch out the password for this page. So once you have this password set up and you're actually able to get into your WordPress site, then there are a number of different things that you will need to be able to do first before you're actually prepared to begin construction on this site. The first part of this is kind of cleaning up the basic WordPress installation. As you can see on mine, even though I only told it to install one plugin, this Loginizer plugin, I actually have a couple of other plugins that are already installed on this site, even though they're not activated. I have this anti-spam plugin, which basically combats comment spam. I don't usually leave comments enabled on these types of websites though, so I don't worry about running something like that. And then Hello Dolly is a basic, pretty much pointless plugin, so I also don't need these. So I'm going to go ahead and simply delete these extra plugins that I have not asked to be installed. Ultimately, the more plugins that you have installed and also activated on your website are going to simply add extra code to the WordPress system, and all that extra code causes WordPress to run a little bit slower every time you add something new to it. So you basically want to have the bare minimum of what you need on a site in terms of the plugins, and this will simply help ensure that your site will run as quickly as possible. Now, just to mention why it would really matter. A site that loads quickly ultimately will end up getting better Google search rankings. Now, it's not going to necessarily make or break a website in terms of being able to get um, the best possible search rankings. But if your site is comparable to another website in all ways, and one site loads faster than the other one, chances are the faster loading site will end up being the one that has a better search ranking. So whenever possible, you want to pay attention to how long it takes your site to actually load up a new page. And you need that to be running as quickly as possible to have a better chance, at least, at getting good search rankings for it. So beyond these initial plugins that we needed to clear out of here, there are a number of other things that I will typically do on a brand new site. Again, a lot of this is kind of just cleaning up the initial things that are already installed for you on a site. Another one of these things is under the posts and the pages, you will have content that is automatically created for you. And so I'll just go in and trash this content because ultimately these are just placeholder pages. I don't need these pages on my site, nor do I want them to actually show up or be available for the visitors to my site to actually find. So I just go into both of those sections and simply trash those default posts and pages. Now I also have a number of basic setup items that I like to do in terms of changing the default way WordPress works, tidying up some of the settings that are available in this system. And a number of these are found under this settings menu. The first one is the general page. This shows me the title and the tagline. This was the name and the description that I provided during the installation process. So if I wanted to modify this information at any point in time, this is where I would go to do so. I also have the reading page here. I will typically change this to only show a summary of a page. In some cases, if I was going to be spending perhaps a couple of months building this website, I might sometimes discourage search engines from indexing the site, at least in the beginning until I have more of the site built. But in most cases, I will try to get this site built fairly quickly. And as a result, I usually leave this disabled and just let the search engines go ahead and index my site as soon as I start creating something. Now, another page that I go into is the discussion page. I mentioned earlier that I usually disable comments on these Amazon WordPress websites. So I simply want to make a couple of modifications in here to ensure that people can't actually post anything. Now, sometimes people will do what's known as pingback or trackback spam, where if they post a link on their website to a page on your website, sometimes your site will receive those or notice that they are there, and it'll actually list those links and provide a return link for them. So I will typically also disable those by unchecking this box. Everything else that I'm doing here is basically just to help ensure that people can't actually post any kind of comment. I disable the comments using this setting, but I also go ahead and just lower a couple of these other settings to ensure that there's no possible way that somebody can actually submit or post a comment to my website. Now, one of the final things that I will do in these settings is to go to this permalinks page. I want to use the post name setting. This is going to ensure that my page URLs on my site, to ensure that they make sense. So it's going to take whatever I have as the title of my page, remove some of the basic words that don't really have meaning, and it will include all the main words in that title in the actual URL for that page. So it's simply going to help visitors of my site make more sense of the URLs. It will also help search engines make more sense of the URLs on my site. Now, with these things complete, the next thing I want to do is to go and install a WordPress theme. Now, a WordPress theme is going to control the way your website looks. There are a couple of default themes that are installed on WordPress automatically, but I'm usually not inclined to use those default themes. I actually prefer to use one particular theme on all of my WordPress websites, and that is called Weaver Extreme. So if I just go in here and type in Weaver, I can find the Weaver Extreme theme is here available for me to install on my site. So once I have this installed, I want to go ahead and activate it. And so now when I go and try to visit my site, it's going to be using this new design style that is controlled by this theme instead of one of these other default themes. Now, once I have this theme installed, I could technically just leave it alone and use it with its default settings. But one of the main reasons why I like the Weaver Extreme theme is because it offers a lot of different customization options. If I go into the sidebar and click on Weaver Extreme Admin under the appearance bar, this will take me to the administration area for this theme, where I can further modify and configure what exactly this theme is going to do on my site. So I want to click on the sub-themes tab here. And this is going to allow me to not just use the default look of this theme, but I can actually choose from a number of different potential theme designs that are available just through this one theme. So I can create all kinds of different looking websites and not have to seek out a new theme for each of the sites that I build. That way I also don't have to get used to using a new theme every time. Now, if you notice on this particular page, there's nothing that I can actually do here at the moment. To enable these subthemes to be used, I'm actually going to need this additional plugin called Weaver Extreme Theme Support. Now, this particular link here, I believe this is just going to the WordPress website, which you could download and manually install that plugin through there. But there actually is an easier way to do this. In this bar that's up at the top of the page, I can click on that plugin name, and this is going to pop up a little window where I can quickly install this plugin on my website. Now I basically want to do this particular plugin, and I also want to do one other plugin that this is listing for me, the widget shortcode plugin is typically one that I will find myself using. Now, for some reason, this does not seem to want to auto install for me. I'm going to go into the plugins page and I'm going to search for this plugin. And I'm just going to install it through this page. Now, the other one I wanted was the widget shortcode. So I'm going to go ahead and install this plugin as well. So now both of these are installed. However, they're not activated yet. So I do want to go ahead and activate these plugins on my site. And so up here at the top, those plugins that I've installed have disappeared from this list. Once I'm happy with what I've installed here, I can dismiss this notice so I don't see it anymore. So now I'm going to go back into the Weaver Extreme admin area, and on this subtheme page, it looks very different now. I can actually see these different theme designs a lot closer. And not only that, I can actually select on an individual theme by just clicking on the radio button. Now, it ultimately is not going to matter which of these you decide to use. I will typically find myself using a number of different sub-themes on here. Sometimes blank, sometimes full width light, sometimes go basic or go basic expanded. Sometimes I'll use the plain or the plain full width. If I want to have a site with a little bit more color on it, I might use one of the other pre-built ones, a dark theme, a blue. Ultimately, though, any of these sub-themes can really be modified in a lot of ways beyond just what they're showing you here. I could take any of these subthemes, change a number of settings within it, and make it look exactly like one of these other subthemes. So this is really just the base of how you want your site to look. So you want to choose something that is as close to what you would like to achieve with this website as possible. And then you can kind of fine tune things afterwards to get it to look exactly how you want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and select the blank theme. Once I do this, it again will change the way my website looks. So I've given my site a completely different look now from a fairly small amount of work. So now to go a little deeper with this, I can go into the main options tab, and I have all these different sub tabs here where I can change a lot of the default options for this particular theme. Now there are a number of different theme or settings that are available in here. It really is just kind of up to you how you want your site to look, but you can basically just select a number of different options that are within here, and ultimately if you're not sure, just play around with it a little bit. So by doing this, I've added a border to my site, I've added a fading background. The fading background though seems to be coming through to the main part of the web page. So I don't necessarily know if the fading background would work out good for this particular subtheme. So I can disable that, take another look at it, and see how my site is looking. This will determine things like sidebars, if you want to have sidebars on your website, or if you want to have no sidebars at all. A lot of times I will go for no sidebars and I will just use this menu up at the top of the page. And so getting rid of the sidebars will get rid of this entire section over here. And it just gives my content more room that it can ultimately spread out. Some of the other parts to this site that I will typically try to get rid of, if I don't have a custom logo or something like that, I usually don't want to keep this default image that's up at the top of the page. So I can go into the header section and simply hide this header image on all devices. I save my changes on that, and you can see my header image has disappeared. My sidebar has also disappeared from that change that I made. So ultimately, these are probably some of the main items that you will typically find yourself wanting to change each time around that you are installing a new site with this theme. But again, there's all different kinds of options in here. You can set colors of pretty much every different area, change how big areas are, how big the font sizes are. You know, you can really get in detail with your customization of a site through all the different options available here. So the intention of me showing you some of these things is not to teach you everything about this theme, but it's instead designed to teach you the basic items that you will likely want to end up using, so you can quickly get your site up and running. And then if you find that you want to add a little bit of color or customize a certain area of the site, just look for the relevant tab here and then look through the different settings available, read the little notes that are available for them. It'll usually specify what the setting is actually for, and use that just to help get the site to look the way that you want it to. There are, however, a couple more main things that I will typically find myself doing on one of these news sites. One of them is under the menu section. All the way down at the bottom, you have this info bar. You can control what things are being shown in this info bar. So this is going to be stuff like the breadcrumb link right here. If it is a post that has an author and a published date to go along with it, that information will typically also be showing up in this info bar. And so in a lot of cases with these Amazon sites, I'm looking to make a fairly basic site where there's not a lot of extra fluff that people are going to be shown. I really just want them to see the content that I am going to be creating. So I might decide to hide the info bar completely on all devices. Or maybe I just want to hide the page navigation or the breadcrumbs. More times than not, though, I usually end up finding myself just completely disabling that bar. So now my breadcrumbs are wiped out. That entire blank line where the rest of that info bar, I wasn't really utilizing it. So I have also wiped that out as well. This also just, again, brings my content up. So now directly under the menu, I have the title of the page, and then I get into the actual content for that page. One of the final things that I will do in this theme is in the footer section. In this section, I am looking for settings that are all the way down at the bottom, this site copyright section. This is going to allow me to modify this if I want to, and also remove the WordPress and Weaver Extreme links, because ultimately I'm going to have these two outgoing links on every page throughout my website if I leave that there. So I can just check on this box to hide the powered by tag and save my settings, and that's going to eliminate these extra links down in the corner of my site. So I still leave the copyright notice intact. If I wanted to modify this, that's from the same section. It's this box. If I fill this box in with anything, it's going to wipe out this and replace it with that. But as a default, it just says copyright the current date and then the domain name of your site, and it turns this into a link to the homepage of your website. Now, finally, this gives me a basic look to my site. As you can see, there's nothing flashy or stylish about this particular website. It's pretty much nothing but black and white with links in blue text. I actually end up designing most of my websites to look this way. So there's nothing flashy that's drawing in the eye of the website visitor. I find that this helps to put the focus on what I actually put on this website. So people are more inclined to look at the content or to look at the pictures or the advertisements that I have within the content of the pages on my site, instead of getting distracted by all the other design aspects. So sometimes simpler can be a lot better when it comes to that type of stuff. So beyond my theme, the other main thing I want to do to get my site ready to go is to install basic plugins that I want to use. Now, ultimately, there are a lot of different plugins that you could use on a WordPress site. But I also want to be sure that I'm not using too many. As I mentioned earlier, the more active plugins you have running on a site, the slower it's going to run, and the more frustrated visitors will get with your site, and potentially the lower search rankings that your site might get because of that speed. So with that said, I only want to pick the plugins that I actually need. There's a real purpose for using on this site. Now, during this training course, I am obviously going to be teaching you about Amazon advertisements. I do use my own plugins that I've personally created for creating those Amazon ads, and I will be providing those plugins to you during this training series. However, I do not actually cover that part at this moment in time in the training. There's going to be a completely dedicated class to building and creating these Amazon ads and placing them on the website. And so it's in that lesson where I'll be providing the plugins for you, teaching you how to get them installed and set up, and then teaching you how to put them into use. So beyond those plugins that we will be covering later on in this series, the other plugins that I want to put on a site are just basic things. The first thing that I need is a plugin to take care of the search engine optimization for me. This can actually be one of a number of different plugins. If you already are used to using one type of SEO plugin and it's not the one that I actually use myself, that's quite all right. Feel free to use whichever one you want to. I use one called SEO Ultimate though. Another popular alternative to this particular plugin is called All-in-One SEO. So if you happen to use that, or if you happen to use Yoast SEO, another popular alternative, that's quite all right too. The point to these plugins, though, is that they take care of a number of different things within the WordPress system to make your pages more search engine friendly. And again, the point is to help you get better search rankings. So this plugin will do all kinds of different things. It will set meta titles and descriptions within the code of your web pages. It can auto link pages together using specific phrases. Ultimately, each of these different blue links here is a different feature that this plugin offers for you. You don't have to utilize all of them. In a lot of cases, I just leave this plugin as it is when I first set it up. One of the few things that I will typically find myself changing though is the title tag. The title tags are going to be rewritten for me using these predefined templates here. And so I want to just clean them up by removing the blog tag The blog tag here is going to be the name of my site. So that would be funrobos.com. So instead of having that repeated on every page of my site, I can just remove it from the end of these different areas. The main reason that I will do something like this, I'll usually leave it on the search results page and the 404 page. The reason I'm removing these though is just to avoid putting extra words in the titles of my pages that ultimately are not going to be relevant to the keyword that I'm trying to target on those pages. So I want the title to be as focused as possible on whatever topic it is that I'm trying to cover on each page. So that's the main reason why I'm making this particular suggestion. Now, one of the other plugins that I will usually use is called Sitemap XML. I guess the full name of it is called Google XML Sitemaps. The point of this one is to automatically generate a sitemap for my website. And this is something that I will end up using with Google, so I can actually notify them when I publish pages on my site, when I make modifications to different pages of my site. It helps my website get indexed by Google faster. It also helps new changes on my site get indexed faster. And the whole point is to be able to start attracting search traffic as quickly as I can with this website. So you can see here the basic plugins that I have installed on this site. Having done these plugins, having done the theme and the basic settings on this WordPress site, my site is actually all set up and ready to start building it at this point. This is something though that we will be covering in a later class of this series. It's actually going to be 2 classes after now. The reason why is because just in case you are not familiar with WordPress and how to use it, I am going to take one class, which will be the next class, and teach you how to actually use WordPress. A lot of that will be for the intended purpose of this series to teach you how to use it in the way that I build these websites. But I'm also going to be teaching you a little about the entire WordPress system, teaching you about some features that I'm not necessarily going to use in this series, but I find it to be helpful to teach you about these things so you understand why I build the site the way that I do. Because you might be building another website in the future where you want to do something different from what I'm teaching you to do. And so I wanted to make sure that you have the necessary skills to be able to do something like that. So with that said, in the next class of this series, we will be diving into learning about WordPress itself. And then in the class after that, we will actually begin with building our website. So that's going to be things like writing for the content that's going to go on our site and the initial page construction process where we're setting up kind of the framework for our website. These will basically be the main topics of the class 2 classes from now, where we actually begin building. So At this point, we're just laying the foundation for what we are going to be doing later in this series. And this should help to ensure that when we do get into the more complicated stuff, you're not completely lost if you've never used WordPress before, especially.